Section 10. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Today's Fair Housing Rules and Regulations, 2026 Standard. Introduction. Expanding beyond fair housing into accessibility. In the last section, we worked through legal hotline scenarios that tested your ability to apply fair housing laws in real-world situations, especially around disability, service animals, and protected classes. Now we take that concept even further. Fair housing laws protect individuals from discrimination in housing, but the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, goes a step beyond. It focuses on accessibility, making sure individuals with disabilities can actually use and access spaces, services, and facilities. In 2026, these two laws work together. The Fair Housing Act ensures equal treatment. The ADA ensures equal access. As a real estate professional, understanding the difference and where they overlap is critical. Because many violations today don't happen in the contract, they happen in the physical environment itself. What is the ADA? The big picture. The Americans with Disabilities Act was enacted in 1990 with a clear purpose: to ensure that individuals with disabilities are not discriminated against and have equal access to opportunities in society. This includes access to employment, government services, public accommodations, commercial facilities. Now think about how this connects to real estate. Anytime property is used in a way that serves the public, the ADA may apply. Public accommodations, where real estate meets ADA compliance. Let's walk into a real-world example. An investor builds a boutique hotel. It's beautiful, but there are no ramps, no accessible bathrooms, and no designated parking for disabled guests. That's a violation. Under the ADA, public accommodations, which include businesses open to the public, must be accessible. These include hotels and lodging, restaurants and bars, retail stores, offices, schools and medical facilities, 2026. Application. If your client owns, leases, or sells property used for public business, you must be aware of ADA requirements. Commercial facilities, a different standard. Now let's shift slightly. A client owns a warehouse or office building that is not open to the public. This is considered a commercial facility. These properties must comply with ADA standards for new construction, renovations, or alterations. But unlike public accommodations, they are not always required to remove existing barriers unless changes are being made. Key difference: public-facing. Ongoing accessibility requirements. Non-public. Compliance triggered by construction or changes. Does ADA apply to residential housing? Here's where agents often get confused. The ADA generally does not apply to private residential housing. However, it does apply to public housing, government-assisted housing, common areas, leasing offices, clubhouses, etc. This ties directly back to Section 7. Even if ADA doesn't apply, the Fair Housing Act still does, especially regarding disability protections and reasonable accommodations. Accessibility requirements. What must be done? Let's walk through what accessibility actually looks like. ADA standards require ramps instead of stairs where necessary, accessible parking spaces, wide doorways and hallways, accessible bathrooms, elevators in certain multi-story buildings. Real-world example, 2026. A leasing office is located on the second floor with no elevator. That's a problem, because it prevents equal access to services. Existing buildings, the readily achievable rule. Now let's talk about older properties. The ADA recognizes that not every building can be completely redesigned, so it uses the standard of readily achievable, meaning if a barrier can be removed easily and without significant cost, it must be removed. Examples include adding a ramp, rearranging furniture for wheelchair access, installing grab bars. What is readily achievable depends on the size and resources of the business. 2026. Insight. Large corporations are expected to do more than small businesses. How ADA and fair housing work together. Let's tie this back to everything you've learned. Fair Housing Act, FAR, equal treatment in housing. ADA, GAR, equal access to facilities and services. Together, they ensure that individuals with disabilities can live in housing, can access housing-related services, can navigate spaces safely and independently. Real-world example: a tenant requests a service animal, Fair Housing Act applies, a leasing office must be wheelchair accessible. ADA applies, different laws, same goal. Common violations agents must watch for in 2026. As a real estate professional, You are not expected to be an architect, but you are expected to recognize red flags. Common issues include inaccessible leasing offices, lack of ADA parking, barriers in public-facing properties, misunderstanding ADA versus fair housing obligations, and just like we saw in Section 8, you can be pulled into liability if you ignore these issues. Exemptions. Not everyone is covered. The ADA does have exemptions, including private clubs, religious organizations. However, these exemptions are limited and should never be assumed without verification. Bringing it all together, accessibility is the new compliance standard. In 2026, compliance is no longer just about avoiding discrimination. It's about creating access. The ADA has reshaped how properties are built, renovated, marketed, operated. As a real estate professional, your role is to recognize accessibility requirements, educate your clients, identify potential violations, work alongside professionals when needed. Because at the end of the day, equal opportunity only exists if people can actually access the opportunity. Online discussion question 1. What is the main difference between the ADA and the Fair Housing Act? Answer. The Fair Housing Act focuses on equal treatment in housing, while the ADA focuses on accessibility to public spaces and services. Question 2. When does ADA apply to real estate? Answer. When the property is used as a public accommodation, commercial facility, or includes public common areas. Question 3. What does readily achievable mean? Answer. It refers to removing barriers that can be easily accomplished without significant difficulty or expense.